We're good to go. Well, good morning, and it's Sunday school time for Calvary Baptist Church, and just want to welcome you to this Bible study. We looked last week, and actually this is the first Sunday we've been in the building since the first Sunday of the month, on the 7th, and so it's the 28th, and we looked the week after at the Sanctity of Life lesson, and then last week we looked at the first lesson in this particular unit. The unit is entitled Owning a Faith That Matters, and the lesson we looked at last week was Life-Changing Faith. And so today the lesson is Yielded Faith. All of these are out of the Gospel of Luke, and so we go to Luke chapter 7 verses 1 through 10, and we're going to see the story, are going to read about the story of Jesus being encountered by the centurion who had a servant who was sick. And we're going to look at that and see about his faith and the kind of faith that he had. Have you ever been out in traffic and there's an accident or there's a detour or there's something and nobody's kind of doing anything, so you might jump out of your car and kind of motion people around or wave or do whatever to get people where they need to be? Well, that might be kind of like this, where Jesus is kind of using his hand, or he's doing whatever, using his authority in God to be able to communicate healing to this servant of the centurion. And so let's just dive in and look at it. The centurion's servant was loved. He cared for him a lot. He wasn't just a slave. He wasn't just a menial person. He really cared about him, and he was concerned about his life, about him dying. And so what did he do? Well, he sent people to Jesus. He heard that Jesus was back in Capernaum. He sent people to Jesus, and then he had them come to Jesus. He sent his servants to Jesus, and they talked to Jesus about the man and about his situation, and just asked Jesus to come. But then when the centurion saw them coming, then he was like, oh, well, do I really want them, me a Gentile, my servant a Gentile, do I really want them under my roof? Do I really want them here? And, so he even sent then a second entourage out to say, I really have faith in you. If you'll just say the word, my servant can be healed. So that's kind of where we are in this. Let's just talk about it a little bit. And remember, it is about a yielded faith. So the first passage, verses 1 through 5, talk about looking to Jesus. It says, when he had concluded saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. And, what was he doing? What was he talking? Well, he was out teaching. In Luke chapter 6 is where we get what we call the Sermon on the Plain. It's the kind of the parent or the parallel to the Sermon on the Mount, possibly. I think Jesus spoke in lots of times. He had, 3 years to minister. So he spoke to people lots of times out in places. And so Luke's account is probably a different thing. We have other accounts where Jesus fed 5,000. We have an account where he fed 4,000. I think that happened a lot, those kind of things. And we just have the records of those things happening. So he'd been out there, he'd been teaching, he'd been traveling with his disciples. And it says, when he concluded saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. Capernaum, a city that is just ruins now. It's on the west shore of the Sea of Galilee, just west of where the Jordan River enters in, the northern end, not the southern end, but the northern end where the Jordan River comes into comes down out of the mountains and all the tributaries out of there that drain out of the mountains, and it comes into the Sea of Galilee. So he entered Capernaum, and a centurion servant who was highly valued by him was sick and about to die. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent some Jewish elders to him, requesting him to come and save the life of his servant. But when they reached Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, he is worthy for you to grant this, because he loves our nation and has built a synagogue. And so we'll just kind of talk basically what's going on here. And then I want to bring out a couple other little things to you that you might not think about. The servant came and noticed that, the centurion's servants or the centurion's messengers came to Jesus and noticed the servant who was sick. He was highly valued. In other words, he was cherished. The centurion really liked him. He wasn't just anybody in his command. And of course, centurions, they would ordinarily be in command of around 100. That's why it's called a centurion, a century, around 100 people, a little more, a little less, depending on who was in his charge at that time. Why were they in Capernaum? Well, because Capernaum, you come down out of the mountains from the north. If you've been to the northeast and you come down through there, it's a trade route that goes around the Sea of Galilee and then goes down through the Galilean area there, goes down along the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River and on down through. And so that was main highway, main road, went through there a lot. And so as people travel through, well, you want to make sure you kind of have people on the lookout there. Why do we have a Troop H headquarters in St. Joseph? Well, it's because some main highways go through St. Joseph. East to west is Highway 36. It's a U.S. highway. North to south is Interstate 29. That's a U.S. highway. And then we've got 169. We've got several other things that cut through here. And so it's kind of a main highway. So here's a great place to put someone who's kind of with the legal authority who can watch over all the things going along. Plus, we have Kansas to the west, which is a state border. So you want to make sure you kind of keep an eye on who's coming in and who's going out and that kind of thing. So why would there be those people there? Because it might have been like a toll booth or something as you came through. And perhaps that's even why Matthew, the tax collector, was there, was so that he could, when people came in and they kind of paid a highway tax to get through Israel or do whatever, Matthew was doing that sort of thing. We don't know all the details, but it's just a thought on that kind of stuff. So here he was. He had this servant, and he heard Jesus was back in town. Was it just because he heard, or was it because he knew the reputation of Jesus? Could have been both. We don't know. But Jesus is there. By the way, I think we said a week or two ago that the probably last week, the main area of Jesus where he ministered was in the Galilee, up in the Galilean area. And he did so because he had kind of been rejected by the Jews. He kind of not feared, but he was, he didn't want his time to come too soon by the hands of men. And so he wanted to make sure that everything was complete and everything was ready before he offered himself up as a sacrifice on the cross. So here they were going through all of this, and the servant was about to die. So he sent some Jewish elders to him. Now, wait a minute, here's the centurion. The Romans and the Jews, we thought they were all at odds at each other. We thought they were all fighting with each other. Well, not always, not if they got along. And if they were getting along, then that was a good thing. And so they did in Capernaum. Plus, what they liked about this centurion was that he had helped them on building the synagogue, whether he'd given all the money, whether he had just channeled it that way, or whether he had given part of it, or maybe he had said, I'm going to take taxes from you, but your money is going to go to build this nice synagogue for you here in Capernaum. And so the Jewish leaders were in accord with him. They were together with each other. And so they said to Jesus, the servants, and the centurion are great guys. And you almost get the feeling that they had a good working relationship there with them. And then think about the factor that why wasn't Jesus on south in Judea? Why was he up in the Galilee? Why was he up there in that area? Because politically, it probably wasn't as strong or wasn't as forceful. There were other things at work. And so he could not necessarily slip under the radar, but he could be unnoticed up there in those ways. So some factors there you might want to think about in the process. And then when they reached Jesus, they pleaded with him earnestly, saying, he is worthy for you to grant this. That worthy word there, is like he deserves this, or he at least deserves your consideration. you to consider healing him, this servant, because the Jewish leaders are saying they're good guys, and if the Jews are saying that about him, well, that's pretty big, isn't it? And then think about the context of that. Think about the context of that too, when it says, because he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. He loves the nation of Israel. Put that in perspective of what's going on in the Middle East now. Put that in perspective of what's going on with Israel's neighbors. Think about it a minute. When we were in Israel, our guide, he was always pointing out to us, we'd be walking in the crowds and here and there and doing whatever. And he would say, look, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Jordanian, Liberians, he'd do all these people. It just reads me weird things. All these, the Libyans, all these people. And he would say, let's that person, and here we are in Israel, we are living in one accord. In Israel, we're getting along. Think about that a minute. And then think about how all these terrorist areas around Israel want to attack Israel. Why is that? Well, it's not because Israel doesn't want to get along, not because Israel isn't, trying to live in peace or in accord with them. Think about that a minute. So, and why did all this start? Did it start because Israel attacked first? No. And why is it that you would defend terrorists? Why is it that you would say Israel's at fault when they're the ones who, in their boundaries and their borders, are living at peace with all these other people who are in there who want to be peaceful people? The peaceful people are out in those other places and letting these terrorist groups control them and dictate what they do. So my take on that. Think about it. Okay, so we move on then. Oh my gosh, we're about out of time here, aren't we? Okay, next verses. Jesus went with them, and when he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to tell him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, since I'm not worthy to have you come under my roof. That is why I didn't even consider myself worthy to come to you, but say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man placed under authority, having soldiers under my command. I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, to my servants. Do this, and he does it. So this centurion was just acknowledging the authority of Jesus. He was just acknowledging the fact that he understood what it was to be under authority, and he understood what it was to utilize your authority in the proper way. He would tell people what they needed to do. He understood people who were over him, and he dealt with it in a positive and a right way. He had the picture of it. Now, in the next verses, Jesus is going to say to him, let me read them, 9 and 10. Jesus heard this and was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found so great a faith, even in Israel. And when those who had been sent returned to the house, they found the servant in good health. They found that he'd been healed. And so Jesus' response to this centurion, just think about it a minute. Jesus sees him as one with genuine, true faith, one who really understands how this works, that we are all under authority. We're under the authority of God. And he knew that Jesus was under the authority of God, I believe. But he also knew that Jesus had the authority of God. And that if Jesus even said it, he didn't have to come to his house. And he might have been thinking about, well, if these Jewish people that he sent to Jesus first were coming here, they probably wouldn't go in his house because he's a Gentile and they might have been defiled. But when did that ever stop Jesus? It didn't. It was never stopped Jesus. He didn't worry about whether they thought he was going to be defiled or not. He said it's not what it's not what comes out of the man that matters. It's what goes into the man. That's what really matters. It's did I say it backward? It's not what goes in. Anyway, you get what I mean. It's how you are. It's what you act. It's what you do. It's what you believe. It's where your faith is. And so there's a valued faith in this man. And Jesus said, I haven't seen this great of faith. This, that word great has to be there, but this great of faith. Wasn't that he hadn't seen faith in Israel, but this man understood the authority of Jesus. He understood who Jesus really was and what he could do. So here we have this picture of a man who was a Gentile, and we get another picture of God isn't just for the Jews. Yahweh isn't just for even those who follow Jesus. He's for the world. He's for the world to come to faith in him. Well, we're out of time, and that's as good as it's going to get today. But think about that story. Think about the things in the story. And God bless you. Bye-bye.